new moon. This is the Abib Nissan. So
Mm.
we're excited. Hey, time is moving.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, it's we're talking about it earlier, but hey, it's like it's like this idea of you just think about like what is the idea around this idea of the Seder? This idea of the Seder, this idea of like order, like what am I taking order of? What's like what's going on? Like what's the order? I mean, obviously people, the obvious things like you clean your house, right? You clean your house, you get rid of all the chametz and the whole thing, which we're going to start going into detail on it. But we're building this concept of like insight, like you know what I mean, leadership type of thing. But which I think is extremely important to have a mindset going into this order. But this idea to say, so I think a lot of people, make the mistake in and they say, I'm taking order of my life, right? Which is there's a humongous truth there. I mean, it is, but like not from that capacity because a lot of the time the cleaning of the house and the cleaning of the house in the preparation for Pesach and the preparation for that whole 8-day experience is like that experience becomes connected to this idea of Seder, which means order, right? And so now it becomes okay. Well, I just want to take order of my life. I need to get organized. I need to recommit my values and all these different things, right? And I'm not saying any of those things are wrong, but I feel like that perspective, I don't want to say feel, but that perspective is very limiting. You know what I'm saying? And it's not connecting us to the real big picture of what's going on. Hold on one second, I apologize. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I just had to put on my tefillin for a second before it got too late. You know what I mean? All right. So, okay. So, anyways, okay. So this idea of order. So let's kind of like think this out a little bit, right? So let's think about today is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, right? And Nisan is the month of miracles. Okay, so we understand that, right? We understand that there's this idea of things happening and it being beyond our imagination, beyond our logic, or amazing things, or a shift in events, right? So last month, we learned last month we learned about um, last month we learned about this idea of concealed miracles, right? The book of Esther, God's presence, but God's still there, this whole story, right? Okay, so you have that component, and yeah, so you have that component going, and then so in that frame, in that component, you have that. I mean, that's what you have, right? That's what you have. You have that whole dynamic, right? And so you're going forward, right? You're going forward, and hold on one second. Hold on one second. I'm not saying hold on, but I'm gonna kind of like think about where we're gonna go with this year because I just put on my tefillin, so my mind just went somewhere else. One second, I apologize. I don't know, it's one of those things, spiritual. Anyways, so okay, so back to where we're at. So the thing is like this. So we're at the beginning of the year, and we know that there's 4 New Years throughout the year, right? So one of the New Years is obviously, right now, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, right? There's 4 New Years. The second New Year is in the month of Elul, right? The counting of the animals. Remember that? And then the next New Year is in Tishri, right? Rosh Hashanah, right? Is the New Year for human beings, right? The Elul is a New Year for animals, right? This is the New Year of what? The counting of contracts, right? Kingship, the reign of a king, all these different things. And then you have the New Year's of trees, right? Which is Tishri. So this is actually a new year. This is a new beginning, right? And not only is it a new beginning for, the standpoint of trees, but it's also, I mean, not trees, but in terms of contracts, but it's also the new year of the beginning of the cycle of Kedusha, right? The cycle of, the cycle of the light that's going to fill your soul for the next 12 months, right? So we went through one cycle of light, right? And every year, we get closer and closer to Mashiach, right? Every cycle, we're closer and closer to Mashiach. So the level of light that we're going to receive on this next 365 days is a different level of light than we received prior. And then not only that, we're different people, obviously, right? The vessel's different, right? The vessel's more pure. The vessel is more expanded, right? So the lights, so this is the beginning of a new cycle of lights, right? That our soul needs in order to achieve its perfection in these next 365 days, right? So this is the beginning of the marathon, right? And the marathon is not an exhausting marathon. It's a marathon that you get stronger as you go, right? The other marathons, you get a little bit weaker, this fatigue. It's like by the time you get to the end, you're just like your head's up and you can just barely run across and you pass the finish line, right? This is a different thing. We get stronger as we go. We're stronger in this marathon than we were last year, right? So what we want to do is have that in mind, right? This is what Rosh Chodesh is about. Rosh Chodesh is about, this idea of bringing out what we want, right? Us being able to talk to Hashem and say, hey, you know what? This is what I want for this coming year. This is what I want for this coming month, right? And there's a big concept, a lot of big concepts around Nisan. Like some people are really big about the first 12 days of Nisan, right? And they say the first 12 days of Nisan, are so big that a person should read the beginning of creation from the beginning and end each of those 12 days, right? Because this is the creative process that they want to have, and they want to be able to have that creative process, and then to be able to bring that into in essence their life, right? Because we want to be able to create reality. You want to say, hey, you know what? Here's the beginning of a year. We want to give, say, $1 million in charity, right? So that means God has to give you $10 million, right? In order for you to do that. Whatever you guys want to do. I'm just saying, whatever, everyone's at the level. I mean, God could create whatever you want, right? Whatever you say, he could create. It's nothing. It's not. I mean, it's not a big deal. Like we're in human terms. Like, hey, man, that's a lot of money, man. That's a lot. But if the goal is to use that money to serve God and that money to serve those who are in need and to be a channel of that light, I mean, it's almost selfish not to ask for a lot, right? Right? Because you want to do it in a holy way. You want to just have an ego and be like, yeah, I'm going to save the world. It's like, no, God creates measurements, right? He creates measurements. So you want to do more, you got to create more. So we're in this process of creating. We're in this process of taking vows. We're in the concept of renewing relationships, right? Renewing relationships vows is a very good time just for everyone to talk about their relationship and what they want to do and how they want to have a better relationship this year, and all that kind of like mushy stuff, right? So anyway, so that's where we're at on that place, right? And so and so so anyways, so with that being said, right? So with that being said, all right, can we do this really quick? Because it's like the class a little bit later than I thought. Can we just pause for this like 10 minutes and just let me just pray for 10 minutes? We could just I'm gonna leave this on. I apologize. I just don't, the sun's going down. You know what I mean? I just want to just pray really quickly and then
Yeah,
and jump back on.
that's quite all right. No, go right ahead, please.
Okay, all right. I'll be back. All right, thank you. All right, are you guys there?
We we're here.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. I just it just because we were going to do it earlier and this and blah blah, and it's like a whole thing. All right. Anyways, okay, so we're back. We're back. I'm breaking up parts. You know what I mean? All right, no problem. But because it's the light, you can't miss out on these opportunities. You know what I mean? It's like all these things are connections. It's like you have a gas station. You're going places, wherever you need to like fuel up. You need like that Supreme. What is it? They got what they call it, 92. They still got that out there. 92 gasoline.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah.
they got that right. All right. So anyway, so I got to fuel up because that's just my whole thing. My whole thing is just constantly, God willing, more and more as we go, we'll be able just to be totally plugged in throughout the day. But that's the idea. All right. So let's go into our favorite exciting rabbi that we've been learning of, Chief Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and to really look at this idea of this Torah portion this week, Vayikra, right? And let's like really put this thing in line, right? This Vayikra is like a big deal, right? Because we just came out of the ability to bring God's presence into this world, right? God created a world for him to dwell. That's Genesis, right? The end of Exodus is God gives us the ability to create something that God dwells with us, right? And that's the level. Like we create a dynamic where God came into this world, right? And then when you look at it from the standpoint of, the correction, the tikkun, right? The whole idea of the tikkun is what? The whole idea of the tikkun is to correct the soul, right? So what's the purpose of the soul? The soul comes down into this world, and the soul comes in here to correct itself, to how would we say that the soul comes into this world with this frame of sharing, right? And it comes into this body, which gives us the frame of receiving, right? And then from the body, the soul now has to figure out this way to connect to its source, right? And as it struggles to do that and goes through this process to do that, then from that space, from that dynamic, right? From that dynamic, right? Then that's the purpose of creation, right? The purpose of creation is exactly that idea, right? Is to be able to look at what's going on and say, hey, you know what? I'm supposed to connect. So if you think about it from the standpoint of the dynamic of the correction, right? The soul wanting to go back to its source, the soul struggling to do that. And by doing that, the soul goes through all these corrections and cleansings and these things, right? Okay, so that's the purpose. So if that's the case, look how out of the planet it is to bring God's presence into the world, right? You're bringing the very thing that all of humanity comes into this world to struggle. This small group of people literally brings God's presence into the world. And not only that, they have a technology. They have a technology on how to interact with the source, right? They have a technology on how to interact with the source. And so this dynamic of having a technology to interact with this source is the basis of this whole thing, right? And so now we go into this dynamic of now the whole concept now, right? The whole concept now is that what we want to do is, in essence, now that God is here, now he's with us, now we have a whole new standard of living, right? We have a whole new standard of living. We have this whole thing, and I was learning this same Torah portion, but in a whole different perspective. I was learning it also by Rabbi Sachs. So I was learning leadership earlier with the people from India. So now I'm learning it by you, and he's speaking from a very spiritual state here. Not about leadership, but in the frame of this. He's going to talk a lot about happiness and getting to this place, because this is very important, right? But the point is saying we're living at this whole new level now, right? We're living at this whole new level now, and God's presence is here, and it's a whole new set of rules, there's a whole new set of goals, there's a whole new thing. And how blessed is this nation that if the whole purpose is the correction of the soul, that they literally brought God's presence down. They just made it easy. And the thing about it, when we look at this, the pureness of that connection between God, Israel, and the purpose of creation, when we look at that, we can see even now it's the same thing. Okay, yeah, we don't have the Mishkan, right? But we have the whole body of Jewish history. We have the whole body of the land of Israel, right? It's decimated as it is, right? And it's growing, it's building, it's getting better every day. Every mitzvah we do, it gets better. But the point is just saying this is the idea. So now we're going to learn it from this other perspective, from the spiritual studies of spirituality, right? This is so we're partial Vayikra, right? And so so this is the point. This is the huge point. The huge point is that we're going into what? Nisan, or we're in Nisan. We're going to what? To Pesach. What's the purpose of Pesach? Pesach, Seder. What's the concept with Seder? So what are we organizing? You see what I'm saying? What are we organizing? What is the order that we're creating? Right? The order that we're creating is the frame of taking control of the fact that we have the ability to create reality. That we're not the effect, we're the cause of all things. And it's the ego that wants to tell us that we're just the effect. That's the ego. That's the job of the ego. That's the job of the Satan. You're just the effect, right? And so when we talk about this idea of Vayikra, we're talking about what? Taking control of the spirituality. This is the Seder. The Seder is now that we're in the beginning of this month, and you don't have to miss any days of holiness. Every day is holy. This month, next month, we're going to Mount Sinai. That's where we're going right now. Not Mount Sinai in the book, the Mount Sinai in the mind. right? The upper potential of our intellect. That's where we're going here. This is the study. This is the focus. This is the dedication. This is the fasting, all the things that we're doing, right? Because we're going to the Mount Sinai of the mind, of the intellect, the interchambers of our connection that we have that brings us close to God. So this is where we're at. So we're in this word. We're in this dynamic of Vayikra, in this dynamic of Vayikra, the call. So we're going to see what it means. Let's go. So he says the American Declaration of Independence speaks of this inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He says, recently, following the pioneering work of Martin Spellman, founder of the positive psychology, the founder of the positive psychology, there have been hundreds of books published on happiness. Yet there is something more fundamental still to the sense of the life and the okay. So he says, yet there is something more fundamental still to the sense of a life, a well-lived, namely meaning, right? So he says there's something more fundamental, okay? So he said there's hundreds of books. So the Declaration of Independence speaks about this ability to pursue happiness, your rights, the whole thing, right? And he says there was this guy named Martin Spellman who was like the pioneer of positive psychology, right? And from there, he's been like all these books and books and the books have been written about happiness, how to get happiness. And he said but yet there's something more fundamental still to the sense of life, well lived. He said there's something more fundamental to a life well lived than happiness. He says what is namely meaning. He said the two seem similar. It's easy to suppose that people who find meaning are happy, and people who are happy have found meaning. But the two are not the same, nor do they always overlap. Happiness is largely a matter of satisfying the needs and wants, meaning by contrast, and about the sense of purpose in life, especially by making positive contributions to the lives of others. Happiness is largely about how you feel in the present, meaning, he says, okay, it says happiness is largely a matter of satisfying needs and wants. Meaning, by contrast, is about sense of purpose in life, especially by making positive contributions to the lives of others. Happiness is largely about how you feel in the present. Meaning is about how you judge your life as a whole, past, present, and future. So that's interesting, right? That's interesting because I would even hear what he's saying and even go maybe he's going to say it later, but I would say most of society understands happiness through pleasure, right? So I'm experiencing pleasure, and so pleasure to me represents happiness, right? And so that's why a lot of people could see what the Torah asks us to do, and they'd be like, wait, that's the opposite of pleasure. I should be able to do whatever I want and express myself whatever I want. But no, that does not encompass your entire self, right? It doesn't do that, right? He says, happiness is association with taking, meaning is with giving. So happiness is about what you receive, meaning is about what you give. Individuals who suffer stress, worry, and anxiety are not happy, but they may have living lives rich with meaning. Past misfortune reduces present happiness, but people often connect in such moments with the discovery of meaning. Furthermore, happiness is not unique to the humans. Animals also experience a contentment when their needs and when their wants and needs are met. But meaning is a distinctive human phenomenon. It has to do not with the nature but with culture. It is not about what happens to us, but about how we interpret it, what happens to us. We can be happy without meaning, and there can be meaning with the absence of happiness, even in the midst of darkness and pain. Wow, and he's bringing it right. So this is kind of like the idea, right? People associate happiness with pleasure. I'm so happy. This is my favorite meal. I'm so happy. This is my birthday. I mean, I'm just saying, whatever. I'm not putting it down. It's okay to be happy. But the point is saying we have to understand that having a life, a fulfilled life, also has to encompass this concept of meaning. And that's what he's saying. One is in the frame of Hesed, one is in the frame of Gevura. Hesed is the meaning, right? It's in the frame of sharing, giving. Gevura is in a place of restriction, limitation, receiving, right? Right? So you need both. And you have to ferret. Okay, so so and he also brings, and it's not to diss somebody, but it's saying if a person just lives for happiness, it's on that vegetation level. I mean, it's not even on that. It's like a mix between vegetation and rock. It's like a low level of vegetation and it's a high level of rock, right? And that's where you're at. You're at that level. And he compares it to animals. He said, animals are living at that level too. Like I used to have a cat. I mean, it's a whole long story how it happened, but the point is just saying, hey, when they had this food, he was good. Like he was good. All right, so he says, all right. I don't know. I heard. I'm not saying I know anything. I'm not saying I know anything about this, but I just heard that guys are very successful when it comes to dating when the girl eats a lot on the date. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's a rumor. Anyway, so it's like this. He says in a fascinating article in the Atlantic, there's more to life than being happy. Emily Smith urges that the pursuit of happiness can result in a relatively shallow, self-absorbed, even shallow life. And what makes the pursuit of meaning different is that it is about the search for something larger than oneself. He says, no one did more to put the question of meaning into modern discourse than Viktor Frankl, who has figured proeminently in these essays on spirituality. He says in the 3 years he spent in Auschwitz, Frankel survived and helped others to survive by inspiring them to discover a purpose in life, even in the midst of hell on earth. He knew that in the camps, those who lost the will to live died. It was there he formulated the idea he later turned into a new type of psychotherapy based on what he called man searching for meaning. His book of that title, written in the course of 9 days in 1946, has sold more than 10 million copies throughout the world and ranks as one of the most influential works of the 20th century. Frankel used to say that the way to find meaning was not to ask what we want from life. Instead, we should ask what life wants from us. It's a very powerful thing. Viktor Frankl, okay, he used to say like this. Instead of we should ask, Frankl used to say that the way to find meaning was not to ask what we want from life. Instead, we should ask what life wants from us. We are, we are, we are each, he said, unique in our gifts and our abilities, our skills, our talents, and in one circumstances of our life. For each of us, then there is only, he says, for each of us, then there is only one, he said, there is a task only we can do. This does not mean that we are better than others, but if we believe that we are here for a reason, then there is a tikkun, a meddling only we can perform, a fragment of light only we can redeem, an act of kindness or courage or generosity or hope only we can perform, even a word of encouragement or smile or a smile only we can give, because we are here in this place at this time, facing this person at this moment in our lives. So he's saying like this idea of meaning could be took to every single second. Like every single moment, every single interaction could be this moment, of eternity, right? And I remember one of my rabbis who passed away, Rabbi Abraham Rachmel, blessed memory. He should be blessed for all the Torah he shared, all the inspiration he gave and direction. But he used to always talk about this idea of when I went to his like his funeral, they read the transcripts of his last class that he gave the prior week, right? And the thing is like you don't know you don't know. Okay, we're gonna live forever. Okay, fine, but you have to perfect every moment, right? You got to live in this place of perfecting of moments, right? Okay, it's difficult. This, I get it. Things are falling apart. I get it. But in the moment when everything's falling apart, you got to be excellent in that moment. When everything isn't going great, when everything's a challenge, this is how you act. This is when you act when all things are going crazy and everything's going out. And this is how you act when you have abundance. And you don't need anybody, and you dictate, and you're in a position of power. How can you be excellent in that moment? And I remember one of the things that, you know, another one of my rabbis who recently passed away, Rabbi Nelson Schiller, or Rosh Hashiva or Samak, he said to me, he said, if you ever get back into politics, he said, don't be a politician, be a statesman, stand on morals and values and integrity. He said that, like true story, right? So the thing is saying that living in this place of understanding that you're on stage. God created plays with crowds, and the lights are dark, and the people on the stage can't see the audience, right? It's just them on stage, and they're acting out this role. And at the end, people cry, they clap, maybe give a standing ovation, but that's after a great performance. So life is that. That's what it is. We're on stage right now. Right now, I'm speaking to you. There's angels in the heavens watching every word that I'm saying and saying, did he tell these people the truth or did he deceive? Did he do wrong? This moment right now. This is how real it is. Okay, so he says, this does not mean that we are better than anyone. But if we believe if we are here for a reason, then there is a tikkun, a meddling. Only we can perform. A fragment of light, only we can redeem. An act of kindness or courage or generosity or hospitality, only we can perform. Even a word of encouragement or smile, or a smile, only we can give. Because we are here in a place at the time facing this person at this moment in their lives. Life is a task. We used to say, and added, the religious man differs from the apparently irreligious man only by experiencing his existence, not simply as a task, but as a mission. Or he or she is aware of being summoned, called by a source. For thousands of years, that source is called God. He says that is the significance of the words that give our parsha in the third book of the Torah is named Vayikra, and he called. So now we're getting into it. He built that whole world for now us to jump into the parsha. Right? This is a master, and he says the precise meaning of the opening verse is difficult to understand. Literally translated, it reads, and he called Moses, and God spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying dot dot dot. He says the first phrase seems to be redundant. If we are told that God spoke to Moses, why the addition that he called? Rashi explains the following. He says, and he called. Rashi says every time God communicated with Moses, whether signaled by the expression and he spoke, or he said, or and he commanded, or it was always preceded by God calling Moses by name. Calling is an expression of endearment. It is an expression employed by the ministering angels, as it says, one calls to the other. He says Vayikra. He says Rashi is telling us means to be called to the task in love. He says, this is the source of one, this is big. He said, this is the source of one of the keys of the Western thought. namely the concept of vocation or a calling. That is the choice of a career or a way of life, not just because you want to do it or because it offers certain benefits, but because you feel summons to do it. He says that you feel this is your meaning and the mission in your life. And this is what you are placed here to do. He says there are many such calls. He says there are such. He says there are such calls in the. He says there are many such calls in the Tanakh. There was a call to Abraham heard to leave his land and his family. He says there was a call to Moses at the burning bush. There was one experience by Isaiah when he saw in a mystical vision God's enthroned, the surrounding angels, enthroned and surrounded by angels. He said there was one experience by Isaiah when he saw the mystical vision of God's throne and surrounded by angels. And he said then he heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And whom will go for us?" And I say, Here I am. He says, here I am. Send me. He says, one of the most touching is the story of young Shmuel, dedicated by his mother Hannah to serve in the sanctuary at Shiloh, where he acted as an assistant priest to Eli the priest. He says, in the bed at night, he heard the voices calling his name. He assumed it was Eli, and what was he ran to see what he wanted, but Eli told him he had not called. This happened a second time, and then a third time. By then, Eli realized that it was God calling the child. He told Shmuel the next time the voice calls his name, he should reply, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Oof. Ooh, you speak, Lord, your servant. I'm listening. I'm listening. And he says, it did not occur to the children that it might be God summoning him to a mission, but it was. And he says, begins his career as a prophet, judge, and anointer of Israel, the first two kings of, and the anointer of the first two kings. This was his mission. When we see a wrong to be righted, a sickness to be healed, a need to be met, and we feel it speaking to us, it is when we come to close as we can. Sorry about that. He says, we feel it speaking to us. That is when we come close as we can in a post-prophetic age to hearing Vayikra, God's call. So this whole thing is about God's call right now, right? And so that's the question we have to ask ourselves, right? This is no accident. We're reading this portion right now on Rosh Chodesh, right now on a new year, the beginning of a new cycle, a whole new cycle of Kedusha. And we have to say, God, what is it did you want from your servant? Wait, let's get the words. Let's bring the words back. He says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." He's listening. I'm listening. What do you got? But this is Vayikra. Vayikra is accepting that I have a unique destination within a collective that only I can hear and only I can manifest, but it's going to fit perfectly into my life. Everything in my life, God created. Vayikra. God is calling me. What does he want from me? I'm listening. God, what do you have? And he says, and why does the word appear here at the beginning of the third and the central book of the Torah? Because the book of Leviticus is about sacrifices. And the vocation is about sacrifices. He says, we are willing to make sacrifices when we feel they are part of a task we are called on to do. We're going to do it. We will sacrifice. He says from the perspective of eternity, we may sometimes be overwhelmed by a sense of our own insignificance. We are more than a wave in the ocean, a grain of sand on the seashore, a speck of dust on the surface of infinity. Yet we are here because God wanted us to be here. Because there is a task he wants us to perform. The search for the meaning is the quest for this task. And he says, and each of us is unique. He says, even genetically identical twins are different. There are things that only we can do. Who are we? He says, who we are, what we are in this time, in this place, in these things, in this circumstance. For us is for each of us, God has a task, a work to perform, a kindness to show, a gift to give, a love to share, a loneliness to ease, a pain to heal. A broken lives can help us mend. Discerning that task, hearing Vayikra, God's call. I'm listening, God. What do you want me to do? How can I serve you? If I wasn't listening before, please forgive me. And he says, God is one of the, and he says, like God's call is one of the great spiritual challenges for each of us. How do we know what, he says, how do we know what it is? He says, some years ago, in a two healed fracture, he says, okay, he says, some years ago, in a two healed, a fractured world, I offered this as a guide, and it still seems to me to make sense. Okay. Where what we want to do meets what we need to be done. And that is where God wants us to be. Let's say this again. All right, let me figure this out. It's like comes with one word. He says, where what we want to do meets what we need to be. Okay, that's great. We want, he says, where we want to meet. The wording. Okay, I got it. Where we want to do. I think he was saying what we want. Okay, what we want. Okay, he said where. Okay, so he said a comma there. Where, comma, what we want to do meets what needs to be done. That is where God wants us to be. Okay, you got to go over it. Anyways, the point is like this. Let's talk about it. Where we at? Where we holding at? What's the message?
Well, I think Baruch Hashem, yeah, you're right. A comma should be there. You know, it gets to a point whereas, okay, so you, there's always this idea that everyone is always searching for their purpose in life. Like, why was I born? Why did I have to be born into this situation? Or why was I born, whether it was a good or a bad situation, you know? But the overall question remains for all of us in saying, okay, what is my purpose? And you know, I think that we we have to find, when he talks about happiness, you know, we everybody has, if the world around you is teaching you what happiness is, then you could waste a lot of time running after what they say happiness is. Okay, in that, you know, happiness is having a lot of things, having a lot of resources, having, you know, a nice car, and all, you know, just all the things of the world, are things that the world is saying will bring you happiness. But there's some people that feel like, you know, oh, I'm gonna be happy once I'm married, right? So it goes in different areas. But the shocking reality is that once a person obtains those things and they find themselves saying, I'm glad I have these things, I appreciate these things, but I'm still asking the question, what is the meaning? Like, what, you know, what is it that I'm doing? Like, what is my purpose? What is it? And so when we get to that place where we understand that true happiness is the pursuit and the accomplishment that Hashem gives us, in that direction that He gives us, the fulfillment of our overall creative purpose that the Ansaf has for us in his grand scheme of things. That is where we find our joy. That is where we find our happiness. That's where we're going to find our satisfaction at. And sadly and unfortunately, many people never find this. They never find this. This. When you first started the article, the Sefer, it made me think about a story out of the after the Great Depression. You have the big deal program that was implemented, and you had a lot of national parks being built. Well, there was one assignment that was noted that there was men needed to earn money. So what they did was they set up a program where they hired all these men to build this road. Okay. And so they would get up every morning, they would go and they would do, start building this road. And this went on for weeks and months, right? And they're building this road. And literally, the men, they were getting paid, their families were eating, they would. But after a certain point in time, the men begin to ask, hey, so where's this road leading to? Like, where is it going? And the road was leading, it had no destination. And it's reported from a psychological journal that this group of men that was working on that program, they became depressed. They became just dissatisfied. They became very, just not even want to go to work anymore. And that resonated with me a long time ago when I did that study, because what it tells us is that you could be put on a road, on a path, right? And you can be given some instructions and say, hey, look, just do this. And this is going to you're going to be able to feed your family and so forth. But the real drive is not the paycheck. The real drive is not me just going out here doing something, but having the meaning of doing it. And that's significant. And that spills over into religion, into your spirituality, because, hey, people are going to be asking questions. They're going to say, man, why are we doing this? Like, what is the purpose of us doing this? And sadly, I've actually spoken to some ministers and actually say, why do you do this? Why do the people do this? And I've had ministers tell me, well, I don't know why we do it. I don't know why we do it. And it's like, wow, then we're wasting time. We're wasting time. And that's going to cause problems. So that's my reflection.
Yeah. So on that point, that's the big concept. That's the big concept. Is like we live in the world that told us that the ultimate purpose or the way we find meaning in life, as you said amazingly, is through acquisition. Whether it's acquisition of a degree, whether it's the acquisition of property, whether it's the acquisition, and it's interesting, all the things that the world that we live in. I mean, I don't want to say system, but it is a system, right? It's a Western idea, right? And it works very well in terms of the aspect of that. But if we're talking about living up to the American Constitution, as American citizens, we got to ask these questions. Are we really able to pursue happiness in a world that convinces us that happiness comes through acquisition and not through meaning? All of our presidents, right? John F. Kennedy, ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You should turn your life into a meaning. Use America as a vehicle to pursue, change the world, right? You got the freedoms here to go and change the world. However way you want to do it, I don't know. I don't know what it is, right? I don't know what it is, but you have that ability. And I think that's what he was really trying to convey. Like, this is the idea. The idea, this is the land that you could do whatever you want. You could change this, you could do this, you could learn this, you could study this, you could do whatever you want. Wake up, right? You say, wake up, Americans. You can do whatever you want, whatever you want. The whole Torah starts with Abraham and Sarah, the senior citizens. He goes to world wars. You know what I'm saying? Like they talk about these older senior citizens, and it's like, and the guys up there raising, going to war, wife giving babies. I'm like, wait, what, wait. So all of this is an illusion, right? All of it is an illusion to that we have to break through, and this is the Exodus. This is the Exodus. This is the Seder, is to break through the belief system that I am not destined to affect the world in my unique way. That's our mitzrayim. That's our slavery, right? Is the belief system that no, it comes through acquiring. You know, if I could just go to Hawaii on vacation and lay on the beach, I'm gonna be completely fulfilled, right? No, it's when you are helping other people experience Hawaii without having to leave their house, right? That's what this thing is about, right? We want to be able to help people get to the point where we said, like, you're already here. You're in your Garden of Eden. Don't listen to the Nachash. Do not listen to the Nachash that wants to tell you that you're not in this situation, in that situation, this. Don't listen to it. You're in your Garden of Eden. God loves you. But I'm suffering on this. I know it's difficult at this moment. This is the season. But you got to push through it. Anyways, so we'll continue on. I think, yeah, we're on for tomorrow. Yeah, we should be on tomorrow. And we're going to start working on Pesach. You know what I mean? Start working on Pesach. We may, you know what? Wherever God wants. We don't know. We don't know. Everything is Pesach. Everything is building for Pesach. Go ahead.
Toda for this class, and it's when you brought up earlier, and I just want to throw this in there that this month, that this Rosh Chodesh and Nissan is dealing with the new contracts and new deals and new concepts are dealing with just a fresh start of pursuing the pursuit of the meaning, right? It's the day, we just, I mean, Baruch Hashem, today me and my wife we're celebrating our anniversary.
Oh my God, Mazel Tov.
And that's significant for us because that when you said that about like contracts, it really you really start to think about, okay, what I want to do different this year, and we were talking to the children yesterday. We were going, reading through the Shloka Marut, and the section about Rosh Kodesh, it talks about how it is looking at like, hey, the atonement of my sins for the previous month, and so forth, and it's just a major dynamic, and this is an opportunity for us to tap into that light, in that light, and just to really know that this is Nissan, man. This is powerful.
Yeah.
We're excited. We're excited. Toda to you, Rabbi.
Perfect. All right, so we're on tomorrow, but we got to get, bro. This is it. We're getting ready. We're getting ready. We're about to go into this new thing, and it's like if we could see it, like if we had sunglasses, a certain type of sunglasses right now, and we could put them on where we could see God's light, we would see this flow of light coming into the universe right now. We will be in awe of this light, and we will see this light entering certain areas, right, all the way down to people. Right. And so right now we're aware of it. And so now this is the beginning of it. So as many mitzvahs as we can, and we'll continue on. Baruch atah Adonai.